We are absolutely honored that in Cape Town, at this time in this country, in this context when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail, you wake up and you come to support us. So to every single solitary one of you who's woken up earlier than usual, thank you. Some of you, I know it's a bit late because by now you'd have done 100 emails, but thanks for joining us. I'm truly, truly honored just to share with you the things that we've been doing. This is my 3rd month in the office. So I'm also indebted to Stephen Kosef and the team at Investec. When we are thinking of coming to Cape Town, they decided that they will host us. Stephen has led this business Investec with great skill and integrity for almost over 2 decades. This happens only to white people. If he was black, they would have redeployed him somewhere else. He has been a thoughtful and committed champion for business in South Africa and a key supporter and driver behind business leadership South Africa. But also, Dennis George is here. Dennis is an amazing human being. He's a scholar, a gentleman. His only sin is that he's a unionist. And these days, these are extraordinary times. So they demand extraordinary solutions. So business is sleeping with labor comfortably. So thanks to all of you for taking the time to be here today. You are all very welcome indeed. And if you take away just one message from today, let it be just this message. Business believes in South Africa. We believe in South Africa's future. We share the values set out in our constitution. And we humbly want you to play your full part in the total transformation of South Africa that is so desperately needed today because our people are restless and impatient. You may wonder why business should feel the need to make such an obvious point. Under normal circumstances, would not need to. But there's a sea of ignorance and misinformation about the role of business in South Africa today. There's even a certain president who subjects himself to be used by Bell Pottinger and bellows from his lips white monopoly capital. When the National Development Plan 2030 talks about inclusive economic growth and transformation. So too often we are positioned not as a national asset, but as part of the problem. This has forced us to decide to speak out the same way that business worked very hard to defeat a crime against humanity called apartheid. And to demonstrate our commitment to a better future for South Africa, last month, I and other members of the Business Leadership Council, 80 CEOs, amongst them they've elected a board of just 12 members, we decided to relaunch the new BLSA, even though BLSA will be 60 years next year. And we decided to launch it in Alexandra so that these big business people in their black suits and white shirts, in the most prime of real estate, walk across the bridge to Alexandra to be with the poor of the most poorest, so that they can see, feel, touch, and smell where their own employees and their colleagues wake up every morning. So that when we talk about the disparities, that it's not theory, but that they've seen it. We decided to do that as a positive campaign, and we pledged our commitment to delivering a better society for our children and our grandchildren. I'm now traveling around the country to remake that commitment in every corner of South Africa. I remake it to you today in Cape Town. Business believes in South Africa. But I stand before you today as a representative of business in South Africa to say something is wrong. Something is badly wrong in South Africa today. Whilst much has changed for the better since the dark days of apartheid, too much has stayed exactly the same. Too many South Africans are still living low-quality lives and denied the most basic opportunities. Too many South Africans are without just a job to regain their decency, their dignity, and indeed their self-esteem. Too often the dream of an equal South Africa has been betrayed by those that we've elected into high office. Our society continues to be ravaged by stubbornly high levels of unemployment, by poverty, by nepotism, and by corruption. In the question and answers, I'll talk a little bit about why corruption is fundamentally different to state capture. So business and consumer confidence is at a 30-year low because of the behavior of our government and the poor leadership where it exists. Some would say where there is no leadership as we speak. And while business must, of course, play its part, it's not enough. The government must start to govern in the interests of the many and not just the few. Because a better life for all can't just be a better life for the 400 MPs. It was anticipated that it will be a better life for the 55 million South Africans. So in too many sectors of the economy and public life, policies have either been poorly conceived or poorly executed, if at all. We are not educating and empowering our people to join the workforce. 16 million of our people are not in employment, education, of training, or in training, purely because of the choices that we are making. The environment that supports job creation and inclusive economic growth at the moment is just non-existent. And so we call on all of civil society and our social partners who congregate not too far from where we meet today and their counterparts in civil society to work with us in the business community to make inclusive economic growth and transformation the number one priority. Because had we not squandered the 23 years of this democracy and business had transformed, i.e. broadly reflective of our demographics, it would be easy today to ask the support of civil society to help us defeat state capture. We thought that the business of business was just business. We have allowed ourselves to be portrayed as somehow separate from society, non-inclusive, self-interested and self-indulgent. This picture, of course, is a caricature, a distortion of reality. We are part and parcel of this society. We are from this society. What then is society if it is not the people who walk into the offices every morning and through our factory gates, pack our shelves and go down mines every day? We know business does not stand apart from society. It is, in fact, society at work, and as such, a critical player in our national life. At the same time, we must acknowledge that every caricature is often founded in fact. We are all aware that business is not blameless, and we are cleaning our own house first and foremost. You will have seen the robust position we have taken on KPMG, which engaged in unethical and unprofessional conduct completely at odds with BLSA's values. The firm became party to the project of state capture, which has harmed not only our country, victimized individuals, the best amongst us, and damaged the reputation of business in general. And we have called for an independent investigation, independent of KPMG, independent of the auditing profession. And we're hoping that we'll have full disclosure on the part of KPMG. Crisis Management 101 is tell the truth, the whole truth, and tell it fast. Don't drip feed it into the South African community, because at some stage the truth will out. But as we acknowledge our own failings, we must also highlight that these problems are much, much greater and more serious in the government sector than in business, because government has a disproportionate impact in all our lives. First, they play with bigger money than business at any point in time. So in business, there is a culture of accountability. There are systems and processes to detect corruption, and when it is found, business acts. I wish I could say the same thing about government. This is not so in government, where the organs of accountability themselves have been captured. Too often government contracts and jobs go to the connected rather than the deserving. That is why we supported the COSATU and broader labor protests yesterday and reiterate our call for the urgent implementation of the Public Protector's recommendation of an independent judicial commission of inquiry into state capture. That recommendation was issued nearly a year ago and is still to be activated, because the president knows when he acts on it, he's laying the foundation for his own imprisonment. From day one in 2007 when he came into office, he's been obsessed with how do I, myself, Jacob Zuma, stay out of jail. Every decision has been motivated by that, not about service delivery. So if current trends continue, the country faces a bleak future and will be forced to live with the legacy of leaving our children a worse country than we inherited. That is unacceptable, and it behooves us to leave this country in a better place than what we found. There's no greater challenge for us all, both as individuals and as business leaders, than confronting corruption and state capture and changing it, defeating it, rooting it out. It is within our grasp to ensure that these trends do not continue. It is within our grasp to take the decisions necessary to shape a better life for all, not just for the privileged few. Servant leadership can't mean leaders that have many servants. It ought to be leaders that serve, because the best amongst us lead with a heart of a servant. So I stand here before you today to emphasize that business believes in South Africa. South Africa's future and our future as businesses are intertwined and inseparable. For too long we have remained on the sidelines, but today we say loudly and clearly that business is ready to play a full part in the transformation that South Africa so desperately needs, and to make sure this country works not just for the privileged few, but for everyone, all the 55 million South Africans. We meet just a few streets away from Cape Town City Hall, where the great Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela gave his first remarks after being released from prison. After 3 decades, he did not show bitterness, but used his voice to articulate a positive future for South Africa free from apartheid. We are rightly in awe of him, what he stood for, and what he achieved. A man who said no to injustice, a man who said, "Not in my name." We now face a new challenge in South Africa, and we must learn that the lessons of Madiba's struggle and leadership and embody, but live it in everything that we do, so that when we see injustice, we stand up and say, "Not in our name" as well. We must not stand idly by while our brothers and sisters face the daily indignities of unemployment and poverty. And we must work with others, be they representative of labor like Dennis George, faith-based organizations, other political parties of any kind, creed, shape, or form, anyone who shares our values and wants to set this country on the right trajectory. And so as we did in Alexander, we commit again today to a contract with South Africa. This that you see on either side of you. And we say as business, we will do whatever it takes. We'll do all we can, number one, to create jobs by growing the economy. South African businesses have created 6 times as many jobs as government since 1994. Our aim is to create even more jobs. Number 2, we say we want to encourage and empower senior black leadership, because janitorial services are exclusively blacks. Middle management, we're doing well. Where we are failing spectacularly is in the C-suite, in the boardrooms. The 80 CEOs who are our council, they are not broadly reflective of South Africa. When you sit around that table, you think you are still an outpost of Europe, not just in the complexion, but in the culture. And ultimately, the best way to close the opportunity gap is to invest in more black-owned businesses, run, managed, and employ more black South Africans, because they can't make an excuse, but we don't know where these blacks live, because they sleep with other blacks, they play with other blacks, they go to funerals with other blacks, and they know the crooked ones and they're not so wholesome ones. So we pledge to grow a new generation of black business and leaders and black entrepreneurs, because it's manifestly in business interest to do so. Thirdly, we say we want to invest in South Africa. Not this narrative that you hear that business is on an investment strike. That's Bell Pottinger hogwash. Anybody that has looked at the skyline of Sandton, you'll see the investment that's been made by business, black and white business. South Africa can only meet the challenges of the future with a highly skilled workforce. We will train South African managers and workers for the challenges that lie ahead. Janice and I were speaking, as we've always done, since time immemorial, that the day we have workers formally represented in our boards, that's the day we are going to start creating value for all our stakeholders, not just for shareholders. This notion of shared value, where we start being just as obsessed with investing in the communities where we come from. That's why the fourth one said we'll invest in communities. Business owes it to South Africans to do more to ensure the communities where it operates thrives and prosper. The penultimate one, we said we'll support small businesses, because that's where jobs are created in large numbers. They should be the lifeblood of our economy, but too often they struggle. It is our duty to help them succeed by financing new businesses, training and mentoring entrepreneurs, and setting them up for success. Lastly, we said we will condemn and root out corruption. Corruption and state capture are the cancers that are eating away at our society. It's estimated 100 billion a year every year for the last 10 years. That's what is being siphoned off just by the two families, the Zuma and the Gupta family. They must be rooted out, crushed, and punished where we find corruption and state capture. Whether it's public or private sector, it really doesn't matter, because we have chosen to be on the side of the truth. This is our contract with South Africa. Judge us by it, hold us accountable. We will be able to fulfill this contract better if the government also steps up. But let me be clear, we'll do it with or without government. Business believes government must also commit to creating the conditions necessary for it to succeed so that the economy can grow. Too many bad decisions have gotten in the way of that. And in the questions and answers, I'll give you some of the practical examples where we've just lost the plot. Our contract is not a program. It's a commitment. It's a pledge. BLSA is a member organization. We encourage our members to do stuff. We want them to work with South Africa, to do things substantially differently than what we have done in the last 350 years. So we want to commit on behalf of the 80 CEOs, and by so doing, implore the rest of the other business organizations to join us to play our part, because that's our only salvation. But what we can do, and what we are doing through this contract, is telling South Africa that we will do more in spite of a hostile environment out there, and we are committed to doing just that. It is often said that the tone is set at the top, but Bob Gareth also wrote a wonderful book more than 20 years ago, The Fish Also Rots from the Head. Through the contract, we are making clear that we absolutely understand the responsibility to lead. It is our critical mission. We know you will judge us by our deeds and not just our words, and we welcome that. It will be the responsibility of all our members to convert words into deeds, to return to their offices, recommit to the task, determined to be making real, tangible progress in all these different areas. And society will be entitled to monitor the progress businesses are making towards meeting these pledges. Last month, we also launched our anti-corruption oath. We called it the Integrity Pledge. As we call on government to end corruption, we want to be clear that we as business are also doing all we can to crush it first and foremost with ourselves, because charity like clarity begins at home. Our Integrity Pledge states, amongst others, that we'll have zero tolerance for corruption in our own midst. We'll not act anti-competitively. Price collusion, market allocation, and just price fixing are sins that business 23 years into democracy should still not be committing. But we also said we'll protect whistleblowers, because that's where we depend on people who know, are in the midst of it, to tell what is it that they know and what they've been doing. So as I've already made clear, while business can and must do better, we don't live in a vacuum. We also need to see a commitment matched by government and labor. From government, we expect a commitment to crushing corruption and developing an environment that allows business not only to invest but to thrive, grow the economy and create the jobs without which we will have a future not worth sharing. Labor too must step up and show that it is willing to make the sorts of commitments necessary to create a successful climate for growth and job creation. When Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as the first democratically elected president of South Africa, he said, "The task at hand will not be easy, but you have mandated us to change South Africa from a land in which the majority lived with little hope to one in which they can live and work with dignity, with a sense of self-esteem and confidence, not just in the present, but in the future." So today our course is different, but the power of Madiba's words remain the same. We must not turn our backs. We have today signed our contract with South Africa and backed it up with an integrity pledge. It is a statement of business's belief in the future of the country and our commitment to making it happen. So I ask every single solitary one of you in this room to sign this contract and the pledge with us. Ask you to take it back to your workplace and share it with your staff and stakeholders. Ask you to help our campaign generate a momentum and help us deliver the change we need. To start a movement, it may be a struggle, but it is our struggle. And we'll be guided by those leaders who have come before us, who fought to change South Africa for the better, not for the worse that it is today. Let me pause and take some violent disagreements, comments, and questions. I really thank you.